Hi everyone, it's Henry here, and in this video I'm going to be painting up the new Dark Eldar Archon model and learning the consequences of not having a plan. Let's paint. So it's been quite a few years since I did the last Dark Eldar stuff on the channel. I did a Raider, I think possibly over on Patreon, it may have been here on YouTube, but I definitely did a Raider video, and I did a bunch of different Cabalite schemes, like I say, quite a few years ago, so I'll find the links and pop them up in the top. But Games Workshop sent us through the new Lady Malice and the Archon figure, and as I said, I wasn't planning on doing this, but quite a few of you guys had asked for it in recent videos since we saw them, so I thought, well, cool, why not? So as a nice opportunity, I think the Dark Eldar are absolutely brilliant. I know they're an older range now in 40k, but I still think they stand up, and I think the newer sculpts like these are just superb. And actually, the more time I spent with this Archon model this week painting it, the more I appreciate it. The detail's beautiful. There's some nice options actually in the kit to sort of make your own. But what I loved particularly was the throwback to this old classic Archon model. So you can make this guy new. So I love that idea. If you've had your Dark Eldar army in the past, you can update your Archon now, and it's the same character and all that. So yeah, really, really cool. And I think one of the things I enjoy as well with the Dark Eldar is, I mean, I love painting armour. I love painting Space Marines, Chaos Warriors, things like that. I just like painting armour. And what I like about the Eldar and the Dark Eldar particularly is they've still got that same kind of Baroque sort of vibe that you get with painting Space Marines and stuff, but it's a different model, it's different proportions, it's different details, but it's still, you still get to spend the majority of the time on the armour, which I say is one of my favourite things to paint. One of my least favourite things, though, is when the joins on models are across the middle of a shoulder pad, which sadly they are on here. I've done a few models recently where the backpacks or the capes and things have been completely separate and sub-assemblies were really easy. Sadly, this was not one of them, which is a real shame because all the details there on the back of the model as well. So with a bit more time, with a bit more care, you absolutely could remove the cloak if you didn't want it. So all the detail is there on the back of the miniature, so it wouldn't take much if you wanted it. But for the video, I've just sort of smushed it together with plastic glue and tried to hide the join as best I can. So yeah, speaking of the armour, I wasn't quite sure what scheme to do, and then I saw this piece of artwork in the recent article about Lady Malice, and I love the blue into purple or purple into blue look. I think this colour shift idea I think it works brilliantly for the Dark Eldar. I really do. So I thought, right, let's have a go and try and replicate this. Really, I think it would work very nicely across any different sort of colour schemes. You wanted to choose that idea of having, a completely different colour in the shadows. So once I got the model built, no sub-assemblies at all, just all glued together and built, kind of decided where was the angle I wanted to sort of view him from, wanted people to view him from, and then chose where the light source would come. So as he's looking at us here now, it felt really obvious to have that stronger light source coming from above and to his right or our left as we look at it. So I'm going to do a classic grayscale pre-shade. So for this, I'm going to use Tamiya flat white. It's my favourite white to use for pre-shading because you can thin it right the way down. So you get really, really see-through translucent coats on the model. Which means we can build up from black, we can build up completely into grey, which is lovely, and something I wish I'd done later on in the tutorial, but we will come to that later. I've just taken my time with this. I've thinned this about 3 to 4 drops of thinner of Tamiya X20A thinner. Now, Tamiya is a solvent-based acrylic. It might sound like a bit of an unusual thing, but it's just, trust me, like you want to use Tamiya thinner with Tamiya acrylics, and yeah, much more thinner than paint, and you can thin it right the way down, maintain that control and stuff. So it's just a case of taking my time. I'm using our new Cult of Paint Infinity here, 0.4mm needle and nozzle, and I'm spraying about 20 to 25 psi. Can't remember if I'm allowed to announce it yet or not, but I think the airbrushes might be going on sale. The next generation ones might be going on sale this weekend. I certainly think there's an announcement about it, but yeah, I'll try and research that before putting the video out. And if I wasn't meant to tell you, then please don't tell anyone. So yeah, building it up. So leaving black in the sort of darkest, deepest shadows, and then building up to pure white on those areas of highlight. And again, when the armor is such an integral and large part of the miniature, I think taking your time and enjoying this pre-shade stage is very valuable, well worthwhile. And equally, if you mess a bit up, just pop some black back in the airbrush and black it back out, and then go again. It's one of the things I like about working with, you know, the grayscale, the white over black. And then I get to use one of my favourite paints that haven't really been used on many projects. I don't know what it is about it, but I just think Luxion Purple is awesome. Very nearly used it on an Emperor's Children army for Heresy. I don't know, there's something about it. Purple paints are really tricky. Actually, the purple set from Minicolor is absolutely banging, but the currently existing purple paints I've always struggled with. But I think Luxion Purple is just beautiful. And the reason I have used a contrast paint here over the pre-shade is they're very, very dilute paint, so they airbrush very nicely. I've just thinned it with some Vallejo airbrush thinner here. I find they behave absolutely fine. And you can see I'm spraying on quite dilute layers of it, so I'm building the colour up. But there's such a lovely, intense paint, particularly the newer contrast as well. You know, I think this was 4 coats in the end, and you just got this beautiful, beautiful purple. So I did that to light the whole model as if I was going to do the whole model purple. Now I'm going to go back in with the Tamiya flat white, thinned exactly the same. I'm going to put the highlights back in because, as I'm sure you can guess, we're going to then spray some blue over the top of it. This is a technique that you can do even if you're not doing a colour shift type paint job. You know, if you, in the past, you might have found, I know I have, when I've been doing, say, a tank or something where I've done a load of airbrushing and then I've applied my colour, but perhaps my colour, I either applied too many layers of it or it wasn't dilute enough and therefore it wasn't translucent enough, that I kind of killed some of that pre-shade. Well, there's nothing stopping you going back to that white and putting the highlights back in. It's quite easy to darken down your shadows when you're airbrushing or painting in general, right? It's usually a darker colour will cover a lighter colour very simply, very easily. It's trickier to build up a highlight often over your base colour. So having white underneath it will just aid that brightness of your highlights. So there's absolutely no reason you can't go, you know, backwards and forwards to get the effect you want, either purposefully or because, as I say, you've potentially messed something up. So I've chosen to use Frost Art Blue here, another contrast paint. Never ever used this one before. So I was kind of trying to push myself to do a slightly brighter miniature than I tend to paint, in a slightly different style, I suppose, to how I tend to paint as well. So it's just, colours normally would put me off. I was like, no, let's try and use it. Now, if you like Eldar and Dark Eldar, then it's well worth checking out our Patreon because Andy loves Eldar. I'm very fortunate to know, in my opinion, one of the finest sort of painters of Eldar there is, which is Andy. And if you want, there's tons of videos over on Patreon of various projects like this Fwagan of his, which was a competition display piece, but then there's also, it's in his army as well, but then there's also, he's got his army painting stuff, he's got his Guardians, various Phoenix Lords and Aspect Warriors, all sorts in there. So if you do like it, go and check it out. And a huge thank you to those of you that support us over on Patreon. We would not be able to do this without you guys. And if for any reason you can't support us there, then pop the likes, the comments, the subscribes, all those things that you hear people say on YouTube. They do make a big difference to creators, and I really value all of those as well. So thanks, guys. Now, for the shadows, I wanted to push this purple-blue thing even further. So I've taken a purple oil paint here. I have thinned it out using just normal white spirits from the DIY shop. Now, I haven't done any varnishing or anything like that. We don't need to, as long as that acrylic paint is dry. Even contrast paint, which a lot of people think is quite fragile, as long as it is dry and cured. So I've left this a good hour, probably 2 hours before going over it. That there's no danger of the white spirits or the oil paints reacting with that paint. You can rub it off if you push too hard, but you would do that if you just had water on your brush and you pushed too hard with a brush. And here I'm going to go in and do kind of what you might hear called a recess wash or pin washing. And because the white spirit is that solvent base to the oil paint, it has a very, very low surface tension, which means the paint is drawn and runs into the recesses very, very easily, so the lowest points of the model very, very easily. And that's exactly what we want to do. So we just you saw there, it was probably a similar sort of consistency to a typical acrylic wash. I needed to do barely any cleanup whatsoever. Just because we were nice and deliberate where we put it. And consequently, it dried nice and quick too. So DIY shop mineral spirits and Absalom Fiber 2 oils, coupled together, they dry pretty quickly. If you've got oils that don't, just grab yourself an additive that, speeds up the drying process if you want to. So now it was time to go in and do a little bit of edge highlighting, a little bit of sort of battle damage, tippy-tappy chips, that sort of thing. So chose nice bright colour. I've recently picked up a couple of new paint sets, P3 and some of these AK quick gens I've been trying out. So I'm just keen, whatever I'm working on at the minute, just to try them out, basically. See what I like from them and what I want to keep hold of and what I want to move on. So a nice light blue there on basically any upward facing edge and any sort of edges that I thought would look kind of cool. I'm not worrying about realism or anything here on the model. I just want to make it look cool. But equally, I don't want to do an edge highlight all the way around every single armour panel because I don't think it's that effective. I want to leave those nice dark shadows. Now I've gone in and blacked out all the other details on the model. This is a very important stage for me personally. A lot of people don't bother with it, but I need to do it, particularly when there's a lot of one colour like the armour on this model. I need to black out the other details just to be able to see them and try and understand what to paint the other models. And here's where the lack of plan began to bite me in the arse. So I was looking on there thinking, okay, are there natural sort of triangles of things on the miniature that we can do, you know, 3 colours, different points of the miniature, like the sword, the gem, the pistol, things like that. We could do the same colour and create these little triangles across the mini. I wasn't quite sure. I had a few ideas. And then one of my other favourite Eldar painters, and someone I'm lucky enough to have met a few times, is Gareth over at Monmouth Minimaker. I will endeavour to post his blog in the description as well. But if not, go and check him out on Instagram. Gareth's one of the finest painters around, has been for many, many years. And a long time ago, he did this awesome Archon. I mean, we're talking, long time ago, like when it came out. And I just thought, oh, look, don't those glowy runes look cool on the cloak? I'll have a go at that. Well, it turns out that perhaps after, a month or so away from the desk and just getting back in the groove of things, attempting a sort of glowy rune thing, something to the best of my knowledge I have never done before, may not have been the smartest idea to do for the first time on a model that I was filming. But to start off with, I just wanted to do some simple highlights on the cloak. I chose to use petroleum grey here because it's got a little bit of purple in it, so I thought that would harmonise very nicely with all that purple we've got in the shadows. I'm a bit sad here watching it back because at this stage, I think this model looks really cool. Like, I was really proud. I was really happy with how it looked for the time taken and all the rest of it. I thought, you've absolutely nailed this. This is going to be a brilliant video. People are going to love this. It kind of all started going downhill from this point, really. So spraying the grey there, sprayed it from an angle so that it just basically picked up the areas that the light would hit. So it's leaving those folds and some of the recesses super dark. And then I just mixed in a little bit of white to that petroleum grey. Again, kept it nice and thin, probably 2 to 3 drops of thinner, just normal airbrush thinner there. I find when I'm airbrushing the scale 75 paints, not the metallics, just their normal ones, I put a little dot of flow aid in there as well. I find it seems to just help them out. It's very few paints I bother with that, but I do find the scale ones benefit from it. So I've sprayed those highlights and then, I say, painted on just a couple there that you can't get so easily with the airbrush from the one angle, and then from the opposite angle I'm going to spray the shadows. So I've just mixed a little Luxian purple and black together here. Again, very, very thin mix. And now we spray it from the opposite direction just to catch the shadows so that we just get just a little bit of, interest in that cloak. I think a model like this deserved much longer spent on the paint job. It's not something I typically do on YouTube, but actually, this is one of the few models I've painted in recent times where I've genuinely thought I'd love to have spent like 2 weeks on this model. I think I could have produced I think I had some good ideas and I didn't execute them very well. And I think a lot of that was time, which was a bit of a shame, but still it's cool, don't get me wrong. So the glowy things, I've not got time to do loads of freehand. And again, it's not my forte, it's not something I practice every week. So let's just use decals, something I am comfortable and confident using. So glossed up the model. I'll link up a video to doing decals here. So glossed it up, and I found this old Dark Elves transfer sheet in my transfers folder and just stuck a load of these glyphs on. And I thought these look wicked. This is a great head start. And now I've gone in, and this is where I wish I had used my Tamiya flat white. I had some white ink on my desk that I had been using for a fantasy project, something I'll talk about in end of October. And I'd been using it with a brush, actually, to get a head start with doing some skin. I thought, I'll just stick this in the airbrush and use this. And it just reminded me of why I prefer using Tamiya flat white. Just greater control, greater levels of dilution. I don't get that horrible speckly finish with, you know, it really annoyed me. But I was like, oh, I'll be all right. I'm going to spray over it. So I thought glowy red, right, let's get a translucent red over it. So I chose a contrast red here, Flesh Tearers. This was falling back on bad habits. I was going too boring with this red. I think if you're going to do an effect like this, you need to be a bit more brave. You need to use some punchier colours, and I didn't. But you know, at least it did kind of cover up the speckly white. So I was like, that's right, it's not too bad. So then I went in again stupidly. I just kept using the ink. You know, the Tamiya white was literally just right there, other side of the desk, but kept going in with ink. I thought, it doesn't quite work. Right, let's pump it up with a little bit of Vulpus pink. Again, too much of a coward. Vulpus pink is just too mellow. It's not right. It's not loud enough for what I was trying to do here. Better, definitely better, but not quite right. So then I finally went, right, Doomfire Magenta. So this is the same generation of contrast as the Luxion Purple we've used and the Frostheart that we've used. And straight away you can see it's a much stronger colour. This second generation, or this second wave rather, of contrast paints was much closer to inks. It was much brighter, more saturated colours on the whole. I thought, great, this is what I should have used from the start. And although we've been using dilute paint, you know, it is starting to build up now to the point where some of that detail just isn't being seen right. And then I saw a bit of artwork, like some synthwave artwork or whatever, and it sort of went through that full kind of tequila sunrise effect. I thought, right, great, let's put a bit of yellow in here. Again, I don't think necessarily a bad idea, but executed incredibly poorly, here, which was a real shame. So, yeah, we kind of got to this stage, and I was like, well, that's not very good, is it? And I don't want to put stuff up that I really dislike, and I don't think it's very good. So sprayed back over that. Obviously, had this been a display piece, or had this even been a character piece for my own army, I would have practiced first. That is that's the big take home. It's practice first. But I'd possibly have stripped it and gone again. But I thought, you know what, for the sake of a video which really is just about recipes and maybe sparking some fun ideas in you guys, which is what I hope all of these videos do. They're never meant to be a sort of showcase, as it were. They're just meant to try and just sort of spark ideas and give you some cool recipes. Yeah, so just went back in. I thought, right, let's just do a bit of freehand. I stuck a couple of decals back on, and then just did a nice simple red line all the way around the cloak, just so it looks like there's something there. The cloak's great because it's got no detail on, right? So you can do all these things you want, whereas typically, you know, it'll have molded detail and you end up scraping it off. So it's a bit annoying, but that was great. That took just a couple of minutes, nice steady hand. I don't think there's any trick really to that type of thing, just consistency, a nice pointy brush. I think I was using a Artis Opus Series S size 0 there. And it looks fine. It was just Mephiston red, no highlighting, no shading, just keep it steady and go around. Now, the Husk Blade, I think a properly iconic bit of Dark Eldar stuff is the Husk Blade. And colour-wise, I thought it'd be really nice to get a little bit of green in there. Because on that artwork I referenced earlier, the Lady Malice one, on some of the cloth, she had that kind of green, that sort of olivey green look, some of the cloth. That's really, really cool. I wonder if I can get that in with the bone. And in hindsight, I think I should probably have done it on the cloak liner, this sort of colour. So black on the back perhaps, and then this colour on the internal. Consistency wise, you can see the two darker colours really, really thin. I'm washing them on here, they're almost like a wash. And then the two lighter colours, I haven't thinned them down as much, so I've just used some water to thin them with there. That's because the two lighter colours I want to be, when I make the marks, I want them to be a little bit more opaque and deliberate. Whereas the earlier scratches, like I'm doing here with the darker colours, I kind of want that wishy-washy, semi-translucent effect on some parts of it. I absolutely love painting bone. I did a video on it, I think last year. Still one of my favourite ones I've done for the channel. It's just, I don't know, there's just something I really enjoy painting about it. So if I remember, I will link that one up. But yeah, just putting lots and lots of painted texture onto the model here. The paint's super thin, so it's not going to build up any actual physical texture. It's just some nice sort of colours, and I think it works. I think it's a lovely sort of effect. It's nice and desaturated. It's much colder. It's just, yeah, I think it works really well. But yeah, absolutely cracking model this. Whoever sculpted it, I think they did a superb job. I was proper like sort of 7 out of 10 when we first saw it, and then now I've spent the week with it, I think it's 11 out of 10. Really do. So the metals, it's not too many, but I think one of the nice things, particularly with Dark Eldar, is that they do tend to have sort of more metal stuff on them than the Craft World Eldar. Sort of they have the Wraithbone stuff, and there's a lot more metal stuff. I thought, again, it's a good opportunity to get some more colours into the model. So for the chains and stuff, I thought it'd be kind of fun if they were all rusty and minging. Sort of, I love that kind of juxtaposition almost of this sort of weird synthy type blue and purple colour shift, and then a much more sort of rusty looking metal. So I've actually used a couple of our upcoming mini colour paints there, but basically something like Rhinox Hide and Mornfang just would look absolutely great, work absolutely fine for it. And then just a little bit of silver sort of on the edges to represent the rust. As I mentioned before, I was trying to do things a little bit differently to how I typically would. So I would often go in and put like oil washes and stuff over this as well when I'm doing the rust. But I thought, no, let's just try and leave it off and see how effective it is sort of without it. But we can talk about that at the end of the video. Speaking of P3 paints again, I've been trying out all of them whenever possible, really. So they've got a fairly decent range of metallics. So I just thought I'd try one of these dark ones out. A lot of the sort of Dark Eldar artwork and Archons that I'd seen around tended to have this warmer gold on them, and I thought that's really nice. That that will work. That sort of bit of orange in it should work very nice with the rest of the model. So built that up with Balthasar gold, just again to create this really lovely warm kind of gold look. Again, lovely little details on there just to paint up. Wish I'd left these sort of filigree bits as the armour colour. I think they would have looked cooler. I think they look a little bit toy-like when painted in with the metallics. And then I've gone in with Garagak Sewer, which is a contrast paint. I've just watered it down with a little bit of just water from a paint pot. Again, just to get some brown and get some warmth and stuff into the metal, as well as provide some of that definition by shading the recesses. And much like Space Marine models and Eldar models, to be fair, once you've done the armour and the cloth, there's so little left on the models to actually paint. They sort of tend to come together really, really quite quickly. So yeah, I had a look at him now, checked if there was anything I sort of needed to address. Obviously, there's elements of the model here that I've taken a little bit further than I'm showing on the video, but as I say, I don't think you need to see those, as it's not a full step-by-step tutorial. But I'm just looking here, so I've got a few gems on the model. Thought, okay, there's a chance to get another colouring. And then we need to do his eye lenses, and that's basically it. Along with the base. So for the gems, again, running a bit low on time. That glowy cloak thing had took a bit of time out of the filming, so I needed to get a wriggle on with the rest of it. I thought, okay, let's use one of these AK quick gens. Been working my way through. I wanted that kind of J colour. Normally, I'd use something like Acalian green from GW's contrast paint range for this. I think that's the one I used. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the one I used on my Cathay. I really loved how it looked. But I thought, okay, let's give it a go with the AK stuff. No, I prefer the Acalian green for me. And then for the eyes, nice, simple little sort of glowy, not really glowy, just a different look. I've gone in with some thin down white paint here, which we just sort of wash into the eyes, and then a nice punchy contrast paint. I've chosen Doomfire Magenta here again, just to push that pink and blue and cyan and purple, all of those colours. It's why I wish somewhere else on the model I'd been able to go up to more of that yellow. I think it would really have worked very well. But yeah, washed that in over the eyes and then mixed a little white in and just did one more highlight in two more highlights, I think, actually, in the middle of the lenses. It's a simple effect, but I think it works very, very well, and I think it's particularly good for gaming stuff because it's impactful at distance. Yeah, not too bad. And then just went back in with the light blue colour, mixed in a touch of white, and just did a few little extra highlights on the brightest points, namely around his sort of face, just to make sure that was where people's attention was being drawn. And then for the basing, I just used my sort of crushed up fossil mix that I often use on the base, and then I just wanted to work a little bit of it into the cloak and the lower half of him. It's exactly like weathering pigment. It's crushed up sandstone, right? So I suppose it should work exactly the same, which is what it is. So I've just smooshed it in just to try and weather the cloak up a little bit. And yeah, that just sort of finished him off, or finished him off enough for the video. So here he is, the result of a poorly planned out project, but ultimately I think some really cool bits. I do think at the core there's a very funky, pleasing paint job I could have done here on this, and I didn't achieve it, which is frustrating. But I'm sort of looking at it and thinking to myself, oh, do I want to try that on another Eldar model? Do I perhaps want to try it on maybe an Alpha Legion model? Something like that could look really cool. Particularly, I think a 40k Alpha Legion model where you've got a little bit more of all the weird sort of Baroque, trim and that type of stuff. And as I say, I'd love to try and work it through that full sort of synthwave sunset type thing where we work all the way through from the purple, the violets, the cyans through to the oranges and the yellows, those warm yellows. It could look really, really cool. And actually, if we go back to the Cathay I mentioned a minute ago, there was a lot more planning on that project, and I will update you guys on that soon. That's been ticking along nicely in the background. There was an awful lot of planning on that, particularly with the colour choices, and I do wish I had done that with this model. I think I had an idea for the armour, and it worked really quickly, and that sort of made me rush perhaps the rest of it, because I was like, oh, it'll be fine. Whereas actually I should have sat and given it a little bit more thought. But hopefully now, between that and the 4 or 5 other schemes I've done for the Dark Eldar over the years, it's given you guys some ideas maybe for some different recipes and stuff for your various cabals. Yeah, hope you guys enjoy these new character releases for them. As I say, I still think it's a stunning looking army. I really do, and I'm looking forward to jumping back into 40k next year and hopefully face off against a few Eldar and Dark Eldar armies out there. So, as ever, if you've got any questions about anything I've done in the video, please pop them down in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you ever so much for all of your support. And I almost forgot to say, and I'm trying to put a reel out about this, or a short or something, the next 3 videos, guys, or certainly the next 2, probably the next 3, I would like to do a multi-part project on the new Blade model. And I will take you through everything from building it to painting it to doing everything I'm going to do on the model. I will document, and it's kind of a look at what my tank painting class that I've done for 7-8 years, something like that, I've done. So the ideas on that. So if you've got a Blade, or you want to get a Blade, or you've got other super heavies that you fancy having a go, then get it built and get it ready. And I would love for you guys to join me on the journey with it. And perhaps at the end we can all look at what the super heavies we've got done by the end of the month. But I'll talk a little bit more about that in another video. So take care. I'll see you next time. If you like any of the models that you've seen in this video and you fancy having an army of them yourself, but you don't have the time or the wherewithal to get them done, then consider dropping us an email at commissions@cultofpaint.com, and I'm sure Ben can sort you out.